Now, as we continue to count hours into Pope Francis' much anticipated arrival, the government has declared Thursday, the 26th, a public holiday. Now, the presidency has also announced that the day will be marked as a national day of prayer and reflection. Now, on that day, the pontiff will have a busy day. His day will begin with an interreligious meeting early morning and thereafter conduct a public mass at the University of Nairobi grounds. Now, this mass will be attended by over 1.5 million faithful. Later in the afternoon, he will meet members of the clergy seminarians at the St. Mary's grounds. Now, in the evening, he will also visit the UNEP headquarters in Gigiri. Now, remember that KTN News will be on his trail, so you can stay with us for the coverage of these events. And when we talk about the trailing the Pope's visit, we also have, of course, what is being done in terms of the preparations for his visit. And we want to now link up with our Rita Tinina, who is at the University of Nairobi. Thank you very much, Rita, for joining us on KTN Newsdesk. Maybe you can just tell us what sort of preparations are being made now in regards to that mass that will be held there on Thursday.
Well, good afternoon, Betty. Here at the Chancellor's Court at the University of Nairobi. They are what you'd call the very final touches to preparations to welcome the Pope, who will be celebrating Mass here on Thursday. As you mentioned yesterday, I was here. A few things were yet to be done. This morning, several things have already been done. For instance, the podium, which is behind me, had not been carpeted. Right now it has a red carpet. The pulpit also has been set up there. The altar, the over 100-year-old altar that the Pope will use to celebrate Mass, was not here yesterday. We are told it is here somewhere, being hidden, but it is not yet put. It hasn't yet been put on the podium. And just to give us a sense of what preparations have been done, what is yet to be done, I'm now joined by Father Charles Kenywa. He is a member of the National Organizing Committee for the Pope's visit. He's also in charge of the logistics here. Good afternoon, Father.
Good afternoon, Rita.
So far, what has been done and what is yet to be done?
So far, if I would say, a lot has been done. All that is supposed to be done for liturgy has been set. What is remaining now is to set the sanctuary. The podium as it is now, to change it to a sanctuary, meaning that we'll have the pulpit, we'll have the president's seat. The president means the chair that the president of the liturgy will use, who is now the Pope in this context. And then the altar. The altar is already here. It is at the basement. And then once that is set, now we have a full sanctuary, as it were. Then we also have the VVIP tent. It's not well set. The chairs have arrived, and the people concerned are doing it already. Various groups that are taking part, they are complete. Anything about the liturgy, if you ask me, apart from the few things that are being put in place, the players themselves, the choir members, those who read, the dancers, all the people taking part, including the priests who will concelebrate with the Pope, all of them have been prepared for Mass on Thursday.
Those who will be taking part in the Mass, in the celebration of Mass here, how many bishops, how many priests, how many choirs will be performing?
We have a choir. It's a combination of choirs from the Archdiocese of Nairobi and outside. We have choirs from Gong, precisely in Koroi Parish. We have then other choirs, then comprising of 300 members. And they're being animated, or they're being guided by the priests who are in charge of liturgy across the country. Then we have the priests who will concelebrate. They are between 6,000 and 9,000 priests. Then we have the bishops, of course, all of them from Kenya. We have bishops from the AMESEA countries. And then we have bishops from Europe, who also be coming with the Pope, and others who are just making their visits here. Precisely, I may not be able to know how many bishops, how many cardinals, but those who had confirmed like a week ago or something were more than 40 bishops who have confirmed to come, and a number already are with us here. The priests, all of them will be coming, quite a good number from outside the country. So we'll have a huge number of priests and sisters who are also coming from the country, from the Messiah regions, and also some from Europe, precisely coming from the Pope, with the Pope.
Looking around, aside from the VVIP tents, I see several, maybe hundreds of seats here. Members of the public, where will they be? Are there seats? Will they be sitting on the ground?
Yeah, initially we thought that we would have seats for the congregation, members of the public. But then we realized, given that this square is able to hold 200,000 people, if we introduce seats, then that number goes down by 40%. So the argument was, let us have Christians come, stand. After all, it's not so long. They can have their lessons where they can be able to sit down, assuming that and praying that it won't rain. If it rains, then they'll have to stand, because if we introduce seats, the challenge is we have a lesser number than we would want to have initially that we had planned. Because we had planned that the University of Nairobi Chancellor's Court is able to hold 200,000. With the seats, 40% goes. So we are at a loss.
The altar that will be used during the Mass, a quite significant altar, over 100 years old. It was also used during the beatification of Sister Irene Nyatha in May in Nyeri. Yeah. What about the podium? Several millions have been spent there. How significant is it? What happens to it after the Pope is gone?
Now, if you look at the one, I said with the podium, it's true, it's quite expensive to put it across or to put it up. But truth be told, every time you expect a visitor, even in one's own capacity, you'd have to use a few coins to make sure that everything is done. Number two, the Catholic Church attaches a lot of importance on where Mass is celebrated, because the highest prayer in the Catholic liturgy is Holy Mass. Coupled with that, we have the altar that is coming all the way from Nyeri. I must say that I'm proud that I was able to, I'm the one who was appointed by the bishops to go for it from Nyeri and then bring it here. It has already been brought from Basilica, now it is here at the basement. It is more than 100 years old. Now, what is the connection? That altar was made by Consolata missionaries. So the Mass on Thursday, it brings in the missionary spirit. One thing that Pope Francis is so much passionate about, reviving, as it were, the missionary spirit in us. So it is so significant that is here. Again, it's also connecting the big event we had on 23rd of May, to be precise, for the beatification of Sister Irene Nyatha. And also connecting that and also reminding ourselves in our own smallness that each one of us can be a saint, given that we celebrated one of us who lived with us, and the people who she ministered to and she prayed with and for, some of them still living. Yeah.
Even before the Pope arrives in the country, on Sunday he sent a special message. It was a message of forgiveness, peace and reconciliation. How important or significant is this visit by the Pope? And as a church, what are your expectations? What message do you expect the Pope to pass when he is in the country?
Thank you. One thing I'm sure the Pope will say, one of the messages that he'll give us, is the message on the family. I know he is very passionate about the families. So he's talking about the same concept of forgiveness and reconciliation in the family. The last time he visited US, he did say that we need to make our families birthplaces of hope and resurrection. That is one thing that I'm sure he will talk about, and it is very, very significant for us. Number two is the giving hope to the young people. Because again, he is so much particular about ministering to the young people. And of course, telling them to choose families, to choose marriage, not to be afraid. Of course, there are problems, but All that notwithstanding, our families can work, our families will work, and our families must work. Number 3, a while ago he released a document called Laudato Si. That document is how we relate with the environment. 4 things comes up that we relate: 1, with ourselves. Number 2, we relate with our brothers and sisters. Number 3, we relate with God. And number 4, how we relate with the environment. And I'm sure that is even why he'll have a talk at the UN and reminding us that apart from our day-to-day work of evangelization, as a church and as Christians, we need not to forget that there is the environment that we need to protect. Of course, not always complaining that the government is not doing this, the government is not doing that. As Christians, and now in this context, precisely as Catholics, something must be done concerning the environment. Number 4 is taking care of the poor. And that is why he'll have a talk and a meeting with the Christians of Kagemi. He tells us that sometimes the beginning of this year, around the month of March, if I'm not so wrong, he did tell us that the world has enough bread. The problem we have is that quite a good number of us are in the duty of privatizing the public bread. What does that mean? That we need to work very hard for everyone to eat. Of course, now this resonates very well with those of us who talk about corruption, because corruption is precisely privatizing that which was supposed to be public. So taking care of the poor is knowing that there is bread for all of us. If I eat all of it, the poor person has nothing to eat. Not only that, knowing that they also need to be taken care of spiritually and materially.
Thank you very much, Father. We have been speaking to Father Charles Kenywa, a member of the National Organizing Committee for the Pope's visit here at the Chancellor's Court. He tells us that almost everything is done by tomorrow. Everything will be ready ahead of the visit by Pope Francis. Betty.
Thank you very much, Rita Tinina there at the University of Nairobi grounds, just bringing us up to speed with, of course, the preparations in preparation for the Pope's Mass that's going to be taking place there on Thursday morning. Well, some very interesting details coming across. There was a 1.5 million people number that was going around, but as the bishop there has just mentioned, that the place will just be open for about 200,000 people. Well, we'll have all those details in our subsequent bulletins throughout the day. But still on matters security and the Pope, as the country prepares for the highly anticipated visit by the Pope from tomorrow, the National Disaster Management Unit has asked Kenyans to be on their high alert for possible security breaches and to report any suspicious persons or security scares. Now, the Disaster Unit Deputy Director General Pius Masai further asked those who will attend the Pope's events to be calm to prevent possible stampedes which may result in loss of life.
Be responsible for our own safety, security, and to safeguard our property. Report suspected criminals to law enforcement agencies. Not to leave our luggage unattended. Not to pick or carry what does not belong to us. Be aware of improvised devices, explosives, which may destroy lives and property. Be aware of pickpockets and conmen. There are people who are taking responsibility to use this opportunity to do criminal acts. In case of medical or trauma emergencies, kindly visit any of the emergency services tents or ambulances and you'll be assisted. We'll have emergency services tents along the routes and venues. Also the ambulances with the doctors, emergency medical technicians, nurses who are ready to serve you for emergency purposes.
After his tour of Kenya, Pope Francis is expected to visit neighboring Uganda. The military have now been deployed to speed up construction at the Namugongo Martyrs Shrine, which will host the Papal Mass. KTN's Solomon Serwanja now brings us Uganda's preparations to host the Pope in the Pearl of Africa.
The countdown is on, and the D-Day, Friday the 27th of November. History will be written as Uganda welcomes the leader of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis. Preparations at the Uganda Martyrs Shrine are on ahead of the Pope's arrival, although it appears to be behind schedule. The Army's engineering brigade has been deployed, this time with not guns and military artillery, but with spades and other tools to pace up the work. Brigadier General Timothy Sabiti is the commander of the brigade, who is also supervising the work.
We are asked to provide an additional 140 new soldiers who are now being mobilized, and by tomorrow morning they'll be here to give further support to ensure that by the 26th all the works are finished and we start cleaning up.
The pavilions where the public will be seated during the Mass have been completed, while the main altar where the Pope will be conducting the Mass from is still work in progress. The construction of the Uganda Martyrs Catholic Basilica has been fully completed and handed over to the Catholic Church by the contractors Rocco Construction Company. From the floor to the roofing, the church has been fully furnished, awaiting the blessing from the Pontiff. A special attention was given to this section of the Basilica where Pope John Paul VII knelt before the Mass in 1969. The Catholic Church is working fast to have the venue completed before Friday. Even the President is ready to receive the Pontiff.
May His Holiness Pope Francis' visit deepen our love for each other, for one another as Ugandans, the oneness of spirit, and promote tolerance and unity across our country.
Pope Francis will spend 2 days in Uganda after his visit to Kenya before he proceeds to the Central African Republic as he continues on his tour on the African continent. Solomon Serwanja, KTN News, Kampala, Uganda.
Away from the Pope's visit now, and the stakes are high for the Kenyan delegation at The Hague. With only 2 days to the closure of the Assembly of State Parties meeting, Kenya's diplomatic maneuvers to save Deputy President William Ruto dangles on a thread as it awaits the ASP Bureau to report back to the plenary on the way forward on Kenya's agenda. Intense lobbying is ongoing as Kenya tries to convince the European-dominated ASP Bureau to draft a favorable report to be debated in the plenary. Sources say the country is yet to strike consensus with the Bureau, and Kenya has protested Europe's push to water down her proposals to be presented before the plenary. Kenya is challenging the retroactive application of Rule 68 on the use of recanted evidence in the Deputy President William Ruto's case, and also wants to invoke the independent oversight mechanism procedure of the Rome Statute to have an ad hoc bench of 5 independent juries to audit how the prosecution arrived at its witnesses. With only today and tomorrow left for the country, it is a make or break for Kenya. The country has threatened should the Assembly of State Parties reject its proposals, Kenya is going to pull out of the Rome Statute. Right, and we want to take a short commercial break. Don't go away, we'll be back with more. Right, now the athletes and athletics officials have staged a sit-in at the AK headquarters at Riyadh House for the second day today. Now the demonstrators want the incumbent Isaiah Kiplagat and his management to pave way for new blood, citing doping and fans misappropriation as the reason behind their clamor for change. We are now joined by our Lean Washira at Riyadh House to bring us up to speed with what's happening there. Lean, over to you. Just take us through the happenings there. And of course, what's the way forward? Now today is day 2.
You're very right, Betty. Of course, we're coming live to you from the Athletics Kenya headquarters, the Riyadh House here in Nairobi. Of course, a standoff has been going on for the past 2 days, where a section of Kenyan athletes affiliated to the Professional Athletics Association of Kenya have been camping at the House headquarters in Nairobi, of course, demanding for the current office to vacate and leave young blood, rather retired or even current athletes, to, of course, take over the management of the sport in the
country. Today, of course, looks a bit calm right here. Most of the athletes, of course, do remain at the Athletics Kenya headquarters as they await what will become of the standoff. Earlier today, we had the Professional Athletics Association of Kenya chairperson, or rather President Wilson Kipsang, and also the 2012 Boston Marathon champion, is also a member of Parliament, and get to arrive here at Riyadh House, where they of course said that they are in solidarity with the athletes, and they're of course supporting what is happening, and they say that they will be of course be pushing for the resignation of the current office, of course with the current president Isaiah Kiplagat, who has been at the helm of the federation for the past 2 decades, being pushed to of course resign. And some of the issues that Kipsang raised when he arrived here, he said that for the past 2 years he has been at the forefront trying to fight doping, and to him they feel the association has of course let athletes down by not doing enough in matters educating athletes. And they do say that most of the athletes who have found themselves of course in testing positive or failing drug tests, most of them do lack education, but that doping is not the only issue that the athletes want addressed. Most of the athletes, the current Athletics Kenya constitution does not favor them, and it does not of course consider their interests, because none of the athletes have voting powers, and the constitution want to have voting powers from today. Another issue that they have been raising is corruption, and they do say that there has been mismanagement of funds here at Riyadh House. And do remember that the vice president of the association, David Okeo, is being questioned, or has been questioned about a Nike, about the shoe company, a Nike deal that apparently recorded some irregularities. Athletes are raising, and currently we continue to camp here at Riyadh House as we await what will become of a meeting that is currently ongoing between the athletes representative, that is Wesley Correll, and Wilson Kipsang. We're currently meeting ministry officials, and they do say that of course occupying Riyadh House is just building, but administration of course does go beyond occupying a building, and there will be Wilson Kipsang and Wesley Correll will be giving us the way forward to this kind of later. Back to you, Betty.
Thank you very much, Lino Ashura. The sports desk is obviously following up on the events there at Riyadh House. And that's where we wind up this edition of KTN Newsdesk. Thank you very much for watching. Of course, we like your company here. Join us tomorrow. But of course, part 2 continues on KTN News Channel. I'm Betty Okari. Goodbye.